The tunnel opened into a chamber, its ceiling low, its walls covered in spirals, hundreds of them glowing faintly. In the center was a pit, black and bottomless, the whispers pouring out like a tide. I saw things in the dark faces, hands, eyes watching me, their mouths moving, singing that wordless song. I recognized one face impossibly, my mother, dead 10 years, her eyes empty, her lips forming my name. I stumbled back, my flashlight falling, its beam spinning across the walls. The whispers surged, and I felt Ida pull, like the pit was reaching for me, unraveling me. I don't know how I got out. I remember running, the tunnel stretching longer than it should, the whispers chasing me. I made it to the van, drove until the gas light blinked, and didn't stop until I was in Little Rock. I'm in a motel now, the city's noise a faint shield against the hum. But it's still there. In my head, in my dreams, calling me back to the hollow. I find spirals everywhere on my door, my notebooks, my skin, etched so lightly they bleed before I notice. Last night, I found a stone in my pocket, smooth and cold, carved with that jagged spiral. The tree is waiting. I see it when I close my eyes, its branches reaching, its roots curling through my thoughts. I don't know what the hollow is or what it wants, but it knows me. If you're ever in Duskwood, if you hear a whisper that isn't the wind, don't go to the clearing. Don't touch the tree, because once it chooses you, it never lets go. The villa at Red Pines. The light flickered at exactly 2:47 a.m. Not a power surge, not a loose bulb, but a single, deliberate pulse that made the shadows in the villa twist like living things. I'm Quinn Adler, a travel writer burned out from city life, chasing solitude in Red Pines, a nowhere town in northern Idaho where the forest swallowed the horizon. I'd rented the villa, sprawling century-old house on the edge of town, because it was cheap and promised quiet. The listing called it historic charm, but didn't mention the light in the upstairs window, the one that flickered every night, or the Polaroid I found under the floorboards my first day there, showing a man standing in that same window, his face blurred with the words "Don't look back" scrawled on the back in red ink. That flicker, that photo-A, was the hook that pulled me into something I still can't explain. Red Pines was barely a town. A gas station, a diner with cracked vinyl booths, and a handful of houses clinging to the edge of a forest so dense it seemed to breathe. The villa stood alone, a mile from the nearest neighbor, its stone walls weathered to a dull gray, its windows dark except for that one upstairs, always glowing faintly, even when the power was off. The air around it smelled of pine and something metallic, like blood left to dry. I'd arrived on a chilly October afternoon, the sky heavy with clouds, the wind carrying a faint hum, like a radio tuned to static. The realtor, a nervous woman named Lila, handed me the keys and muttered, "Don't mess with the upstairs. It's particular." I thought she meant the plumbing. Inside, the villa was a time capsule creaking hardwood floors, faded wallpaper with floral patterns curling at the edges, and furniture that smelled of dust and old secrets. The staircase to the second floor was steep, its banister worn smooth, leading to a locked door at the end of the hall. The key didn't work, and Lila's number went straight to voicemail when I tried to call. I set up in the downstairs bedroom, figuring I'd deal with it later. That night, I woke to the flicker too. 47 a.m., the light in the upstairs window pulsing once, then going dark. I checked the breaker, thinking it was a fault, but everything was fine. That's when I found the Polaroid, slipped under a loose floorboard in the living room, the man's blurred face staring out, his hand pressed against the glass. I didn't sleep after that. The house felt alive, the silence too heavy, broken only by the occasional creak of the walls, like footsteps pacing above me. My skin prickled, my mind replaying the Polaroid's warning, "Don't look back." I tried to work, typing up notes for my next article, but my eyes kept drifting to the staircase, to the locked door I hadn't seen yet. The metallic smell was stronger now, seeping from the walls, mixing with the musty scent of old wood. I told myself it was just the house, just my imagination, but the flicker came again the next night. 2:47 a.m. And this time, I heard something a whisper, faint and garbled, like a voice trapped in static, coming from upstairs. "Quinn, See? I went to the diner the next morning, needing coffee and answers. The waitress, an older woman named Dot, with eyes that didn't blink enough, poured me a cup and leaned in when I mentioned the villa. "You're staying at the old Hartwell place?" she said, her voice low. "Heard anything yet?" "Just the wind," I lied, my hands tightening around the mug. She didn't buy it. That house don't like guests. Last folks who stayed there, a couple from Boise, left after a week. Said the lights kept talking. She wouldn't say more, just shuffled off, muttering about bad ground. I asked around, but the locals were cagey. Their answers, vague stories of the Hartwell family, who'd built the villa in the 1890s and vanished by 1910, of lights that flickered without power, of whispers no one could trace. One man, an old-timer named Cal, grabbed my arm as I left. "Don't look behind you," he said, his breath sour with whiskey. "Not when the light goes on." Back at the villa, I couldn't focus. The whisper was louder now, even in daylight, weaving through the hum of the forest outside. I searched the house, looking for clues, and found a trapdoor in the pantry, its hinges rusted, its wood carved with a spiral symbol-jagged, like a scar. I pried it open, the air below cold and damp, smelling of iron and decay. My flashlight revealed a narrow staircase, descending into darkness. I didn't go down. Not then. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting, listening. That night, the flicker came again, 2:47 a.m., but this time the whisper was clearer, my name sharp and insistent. "Quinn, come." I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding, the key suddenly working in the locked door. The upstairs hall was long, its wallpaper peeling, the air thick with that metallic smell. At the end was a room, its door ajar, the flickering light spilling out. Inside was a single window, the one I'd seen from below, its glass smeared with something dark, like blood wiped away. On the floor was another Polaroid, showing me standing in that room, my face blank, my eyes too dark. I hadn't taken it, I hadn't been here before. I ran downstairs, locked the door, and shoved the chair against it. The whisper followed, louder now, a chorus of voices, some soft, some angry, all calling my name. I called Lila, but her voicemail was different now, just static, and a faint whisper, my name, over and over. I tried to leave, but my car wouldn't start, the engine dead, the dashboard flickering like the light upstairs. The house creaked, the shadows moving, and I found more Polaroids under the couch, in my bag, on the kitchen counterall, showing me in that room, my face wrong, my hands pressed against the window. I went back to the trapdoor, needing answers. The staircase led to a basement, its walls stone, slick with moisture, carved with more spirals, glowing faintly. The air was heavy, the iron decay smell overwhelming. At the far end was a door, black and smooth, like the one upstairs but larger, its surface pulsing with that same sickly light. The whisper came from it, a song now, wordless but alive, pulling me closer. I saw shapes in the dark figures, not human, their forms shifting, their eyes glinting like the Polaroid's flash. They didn't move, just watched, their presence heavy, like a hand on my throat. I touched the door, and it was warm, alive, the spirals moving under my fingers. The voices surged, and I saw faces in the door's surface, not reflections, but people, their mouths open, singing. I saw the man from the first Polaroid, his face clear now, his eyes empty. And then I saw myself, my face in the door, my voice joining the song. I screamed, or tried to, but the sound was swallowed, the air too thick to breathe. I don't know how I got out. I remember running, the stairs endless, the whispers chasing me. I made it to the van, drove until the gaslight blinked, and didn't stop until I was in Spokane. I'm in a motel now, the city's noise, a faint shield against the hum. But it's still there. In my head, in my dreams, calling me back to the villa. I find spirals everywhere on my door, my notebooks, my skin, etched so lightly they bleed before I notice. Last night, I found a Polaroid in my wallet, showing me in that upstairs room, my face blank, the words, "Don't look back," written in my own handwriting. The villa is waiting. I see it when I close my eyes, its light flickering, its door open, calling me home. I don't know what lives in Red Pines or what it wants, but it knows me. If you're ever in northern Idaho, if you see a villa with a light that flickers at 2, 47 a.m., don't stay, don't look at the window, because once you do, the house never lets you go. The shadow on the sill. The shadow moved at 4:12 a.m. Not a flicker of moonlight or a passing car's headlights, but a deliberate, fluid motion across the windowsill of my rented cabin in Hollow Creek, Kentucky. I'm Mara Tate, a private investigator who'd retreated to this speck of a town to escape a case that went bad in Louisville. I needed quiet, a place to lick my wounds, but Hollow Creek wasn't quiet, not really. The cabin, a weathered box of logs perched on a hill overlooking a dense forest, came with a warning from the owner, a grizzled man named Amos. Don't open the window by the bed. Not ever. I thought he was joking, or maybe just superstitious, until I saw that shadow and found the note slipped under my door the next morning. It saw you. Don't look again. The handwriting wasn't mine, and it wasn't Amos's. Hollow Creek was barely a Tona gas station, a bar with a flickering neon sign and a scattering of homes swallowed by the pines. The air was heavy with the scent of damp moss and something acrid, like burned metal, that clung to the back of my throat. I'd arrived in late October, the sky a bruised gray, the forest so thick it seemed to pulse with its own rhythm. The cabin was cheap, isolated, perfect for disappearing. It had one bedroom, a sagging couch, and a kitchen that smelled of mildew and old grease. The window by the bed, the one Amos warned about, was small, its glass warped, distorting the trees outside into twisted shapes. I'd covered it with a curtain, but that first night I woke to the shadow-long, thin, moving like ink spilling across the sill, pausing as if it knew I was watching. I didn't sleep after that. My heart hammered, my mind replaying the shadow's movement, too smooth, too alive. The cabin was silent, but the silence felt wrong, like it was waiting. I checked the door. The locks, the windows, everything was secure, but the air was thick, heavy with that burned metal smell. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a branch swaying in the wind, but the note under the door changed everything. It was on yellowed paper, the ink fresh, the words jagged, like they'd been written in a hurry. I called Amos, my hands shaking, but his phone went to voicemail, his message a curt, "Leave a message, I'm out." The next day, I drove to the bar, needing answers. The place was dim, smelling of stale beer and cigarette smoke. The bartender, a woman named Ruth with eyes like chipped ice, poured me a coffee and listened as I described the shadow, the note. "You're at the old Whitaker cabin," she said, not a question. "Folks, don't stay there long. That window, it's got a history." "What kind?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She leaned closer, her voice low. "Whitakers built that place in the 1880s. Said the forest talked to them through the window. Last Whitaker, a girl named Eliza, disappeared in 92. Left a note like yours," said the shadow was watching. Ruth turned away, busying herself with a rag, but I caught the fear in her eyes. I went back to the cabin, the note burning a hole in my pocket. The forest felt closer now, the trees leaning in, their branches scratching the roof like fingers. I searched the cabin, looking for clues, and found a loose floorboard under the bed. Beneath it was a tin box, rusted and heavy, containing a journal pages, yellowed, ink faded, but the handwriting clear. It belonged to Eliza Whitaker, dated 1992. She wrote about the shadow, how it came every night at 4:12 a.m., how it whispered her name, how it moved inside the window, not outside. The last entry was a single line. "It's not a shadow, it's me." My stomach twisted. I checked the window, the curtain still in place, but the glass was cold, too cold, like it was pulling heat from the room. That night, the shadow came again. 4:12 a.m., sliding across the sill, slow and deliberate, like it was testing the curtain's edge. The whisper followed, soft and guttural, my name woven into a sound that wasn't words. "Mara, look." I didn't. I sat on the couch, my gun in my lap, staring at the curtain, waiting for dawn. But the whisper didn't stop, and by morning, another note was under the door. "You looked. It knows." I hadn't looked. I was sure of it. But the note felt like an accusation, heavy in my hand. I drove to the gas station, hoping to find Amos, but the clerk, a kid with nervous eyes, said he'd been gone for days. "You're at the Whitaker place?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Get out. That window? It ain't right." He wouldn't say more, just handed me my change and turned away. Back at the cabin, I couldn't think straight. The whisper was louder now, even in daylight, a hum that vibrated in my bones. I found more notes under my pillow, in my bag, tucked inside the journal, all in that same jagged handwriting, all saying the same thing. Look, I burned them, but the ashes smelled wrong, sweet and metallic, like the forest itself. I searched the cabin again, finding scratches on the walls, the floor, the window frame thin, precise, forming a spiral pattern that matched one in Eliza's journal, labeled The Mark of the Watcher. I called a friend, Lena, a retired cop in Louisville, and sent her photos of the notes, the journal, the scratches. She called back, her voice tight. "Mara, that symbolite's old, tied to stories about the forest. The Whitakers thought it was a door, not to a place, but to something. Get out of there! Now." I wanted to, but the whisper was in my head, a constant pull, urging me to the window. I covered it with a blanket, nailed it shut, but the shadow came anyway. 412 a.m. Moving through the blanket, its form sharper now, like a silhouette of me, but wrong too tall, too thin, its head tilted at an impossible angle. I didn't sleep. I sat by the door, gun in hand, listening as the whisper grew into a chorus, voices overlapping, some soft, some screaming, all saying my name. I found another note, this time inside my coat pocket. "You're already here." My handwriting, but not mine. I tore it up, my hands shaking, and decided to leave. I packed my bag, grabbed my keys, but the car wouldn't start, the engine dead, the dashboard flickering like the shadow on the sill. Desperate, I pried open the window frame, needing to know. The glass was smooth, but the wood was warm, pulsing, the spiral scratches glowing faintly. The shadow was there, inside the glass, not outside. Its form shifting, my face staring back, but not my face me. Eyes were empty, my mouth open, whispering. I smashed the window, the glass shattering, but the shadow didn't move. It reached out, its fingers brushing the air, and I felt Ida tug, like something pulling at my core, unraveling me. I ran, leaving everything, my bag, my gun, my sanity. The forest was a blur, the trees closing in, their branches snagging my clothes. I made it to the gas station, hitchhiked to Lexington, and didn't stop until I was in a motel. The city's noise, a faint shield against the whisper. But it's still there. In my head, in my dreams, calling me back to the cabin. I find spirals everywhere on my door, my skin, my mirror, etched so lightly they bleed before I notice. Last night, I found a note in my wallet, in my handwriting. "Look behind you." I don't look. I can't. But the shadow is there, in every reflection, every dark corner, waiting. I see it when I close my eyes. Its form sharper, my face clearer, whispering my name. I don't know what lives in Hollow Creek, or what it wants, but it knows me. If you're ever in Kentucky, if you see a cabin with a window that doesn't look right, don't stay. Don't look at the sill. Because once the shadow sees you, it never lets you go. The last guest at the Starlight Motel. The neon sign flickered like a dying heartbeat, casting a sickly pink glow over the cracked asphalt of the Starlight Motel's parking lot. I found the place by accident, or so I thought, when my car broke down on a lonely stretch of Route 17 in rural Nevada. My name's Nora Quinn, a freelance journalist chasing a story about forgotten towns in the Mojave Desert. It was October, the air sharp with the scent of sagebrush and dust, and I was stranded, my old Honda Civic coughing its last breath 10 miles from anywhere. The motel was the only sign of life, a squat, U-shaped building with peeling paint and a half-lit sign that read, Starlight Motel, Vacancy. Below it, in smaller letters, someone had scrawled in marker, Last room left. I grabbed my backpack and trudged toward the office, the gravel crunching under my boots. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the faint buzz of the neon and a distant coyote's howl. The office door creaked as I pushed it open, releasing a musty smell of stale coffee and cigarette smoke. A bell above the door jingled, too loud in the quiet. Behind the counter sat a man, gaunt and pale, his eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in years. His name tag read Cliff. He didn't look up from the crossword puzzle he was scribbling in, but his voice was low, raspy. Last room's yours, number 13, keys on the hook. I glanced at the wall behind him, where a single key dangled from a rusted hook, the tag marked 13 in faded red ink. You don't need my name or anything? I asked, fishing for my wallet. He shook his head, still not looking up. Don't need it. Just sign the book. He slid a leather-bound ledger across the counter, its pages yellowed and curling. I scrawled my name, noticing the last entry was dated 3 months ago. John Doe, room 13. The handwriting was shaky, the ink smudged like it had been written in a hurry. I handed over a 20, but Cliff waved it away. First night's free. You'll need it. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning I couldn't grasp. I took the key, its metal cold against my palm, and headed to room 13. The motel was eerily quiet. The other rooms dark, their curtains drawn tight. My room was at the far end of the U, its door slightly ajar, as if someone had just left. The air inside was damp, smelling of mildew and something metallic, like old pennies. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the faded wallpaper. The bed was made, but the sheets were threadbare, stained with faint brown spots. A rotary phone sat on the nightstand, its cord frayed, and a small mirror hung above a chipped sink. I locked the door, double-checked it, and tried to shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I called a tow truck, but the line crackled, the operator's voice fading in and out. Nearest truck's in Reno, she said. Might be a day or two. I hung up, frustrated, and lay on the bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling. That's when I heard a faint tapping, like fingers drumming on glass. It came from the window, but when I pulled the curtain back, there was nothing, just the empty parking lot and the neon signs flicker. The tapping stopped, then started again, this time from the mirror. I froze, my reflection staring back, but it felt wrong, like the face wasn't quite mine. My eyes looked too wide, my skin too pale. I covered the mirror with a towel, telling myself it was just exhaustion. Sleep didn't come easy. The tapping continued, irregular but persistent, now joined by a low hum, like a refrigerator running in another room. I pulled the pillow over my head, but the sound burrowed into my skull, vibrating in my teeth. Around midnight, the phone rang, a shrill, jarring sound that made me bolt upright. I hesitated, then picked it up. Static crackled, thick and heavy, but beneath it, I heard a voice as soft, almost a whisper, saying my name, Nora, stay. I slammed the receiver down, my heart pounding. The hum stopped, but the silence was worse, thick and suffocating, like the room was holding its breath. The next morning, I went back to the office, determined to get answers. Cliff was there, still hunched over his crossword as if he hadn't moved. Who else is staying here? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I heard noises last night. He didn't look up. Just you. Last guest checked out months ago. But the ledger? Folks come and go, he said, his pencil scratching the paper. Room 13 special, always the last one taken. I pressed him, but he wouldn't say more. Just pointed me to a diner across the road for breakfast. The diner was a relic, its chrome stools rusted, its formica counters chipped. The waitress, a woman with gray hair and a permanent frown, poured me coffee that tasted like tar. I asked about the motel, hoping for some local gossip. Her eyes narrowed. Starlight? You're staying there? She leaned in, her voice low. Get out before dark. That place, it don't let go of everyone. She wouldn't elaborate, just shuffled away, muttering about bad ground. I left a tip and headed back, my unease growing. The motel felt different in daylight, the shadows sharper, the air heavier. I decided to poke around, see if I could find anything about room 13 or the strange noises. The other rooms were locked, their windows boarded or covered with grime. But behind the motel, hidden by overgrown sagebrush, I found a storm cellar, its doors padlocked but rusted through. I pried them open with a crowbar from my car, the hinges screaming in protest. The cellar was dark, the air thick with the smell of wet earth and decay. My flashlight revealed shelves lined with jars, their contents murky, floating in cloudy liquid. Old furniture was stacked against the wall shares, a dresser, a cracked mirror like the one in my room. In the corner, under a tarp, was a box of papers, receipts, maintenance logs, and a guest ledger, different from the one in the office. Its pages were filled with names, all for room 13, dating back decades. Each entry had a note beside it. Didn't leave, gone by morning, heard the song. My name was there too, in my own handwriting, dated yesterday. But I hadn't written in this ledger. I'd signed the one in the office. My hands shook as I stuffed the ledger into my backpack. I needed to get out, tow truck or not. But as I climbed out of the cellar, I heard it again, the tapping, louder now, coming from the direction of my room. I ran back, my boots slipping on the gravel, and found the door to room 13 wide open. Inside, the mirror was uncovered, the towel neatly folded on the bed. My reflection stared back, but it wasn't right. My eyes were wrong, too dark, and my mouth was moving, humming a tune I didn't know. I grabbed my bag and bolted for the car, but the key wouldn't turn. The engine sputtered, then died, the dashboard lights flickering like the neon sign. The tapping was everywhere now, on the windows, the roof, the hood, a relentless rhythm that matched the hum in my head. I stumbled out, the desert air cold against my skin, and ran toward the highway, hoping to flag down a car. But the road was empty. The horizon swallowed by a creeping fog that hadn't been there an hour ago. I don't know how long I walked, but the motel kept appearing, no matter which direction I went. The neon sign glowed brighter, the words, "Last room left," pulsing like a lure. I tried to call for help, but my phone was dead. Its screen cracked, showing a photo I hadn't taken. Me standing in room 13, my face blank, my hands pressed against the mirror. Desperate, I went back to the office. Cliff was gone, the crossword abandoned, half finished. The ledger was open, my name now circled in red ink with a new note, singing. I tore through the office, looking for anything, a phone, a map, a way out. In a drawer, I found a Polaroid, faded but clear. A woman in room 13, her face pale, her eyes empty, standing in front of the mirror. On the back, in the same shaky handwriting as the ledger, "She stayed too long." The hum was louder now, a song without words, pulling me back to room 13. I fought it, my nails digging into my palms, but my feet moved anyway, step by step, until I was standing in the room again. The mirror was waiting, its surface rippling like water. My reflection smiled, but I wasn't smiling. It raised a hand, beckoning, and I felt a tug, not just in my mind, but in my chest, like something was unraveling inside me. I don't know how I broke free. I remember screaming, smashing the mirror with the phone, glass shattering across the floor. The hum stopped, the room silent, but the air was thick, heavy with the scent of blood. I ran, leaving everything, my bag, my car, my sanity. I hitchhiked to Reno, my hands trembling, my mind replaying the song I couldn't shake. I told myself it was over, that I'd escaped. But it's not over. The hum is still there, faint but growing, like a radio signal tuning in. At night, I see the motel in my dreams, the neon sign flickering, the mirror whole again, my reflection waiting. Last week, I found a key in my pocket, rusted and cold, marked 13. I live in a city now, far from the desert, but yesterday, I saw Ita neon sign in an alley, flickering pink, the words, "Last room left," glowing in the dark. I don't sleep anymore. The song is louder, and sometimes I catch myself humming along, my voice, not my own. I don't know what the Starlight Motel is, or what it wants, but it's not done with me. If you're ever on Route 17, if you see a neon sign in the desert, keep driving. Don't stop. Don't take the key, because once you check into room 13, you never check out. The Hollow Choir. The rain came down in sheets, a relentless gray curtain that blurred the world beyond the windshield. I was driving home from a weekend in Portland, my headlights cutting weak beams through the storm as I navigated the winding backroads of Southern Oregon. The radio had long since fizzled into static, leaving only the rhythmic thump of wipers and the hiss of tires on wet asphalt. I was tired, bone tired after a fight with my girlfriend that had left me raw and restless. Maybe that's why I didn't notice the sign at first. It was small, rusted, leaning crookedly at the edge of the road like it had been forgotten for decades. Hollow Creek, 3 miles. I frowned, squinting through the rain. I'd driven this route 100 times. and I'd never seen a turnoff for any place called Hollow Creek. My GPS was useless out here, the screen stuck on a loading spiral, so I figured it was just an old logging road or some ghost town marker. Still, something about it tugged at me, a faint, uneasy pull, like a whisper you can't quite hear but feel in your chest. I kept driving, the sign fading into the rearview mirror, but the name stuck with me. Hollow Creek. It sounded wrong, like a name you'd find scratched into the bark of a tree in a place nobody goes. 10 minutes later, the rain got worse. A deluge that turned the road into a river. My old Civic started to hydroplane, the wheel jerking in my hands. I cursed, slowing to a crawl, when my headlights caught something up ahead, a flicker of white through the trees. It was a figure, a woman maybe, standing motionless at the edge of the road. She was dressed in something pale, a dress or a nightgown, soaked through and clinging to her skin. Her hair hung in dark, wet strands over her face, and she was just standing there, head tilted slightly, like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. My stomach twisted. This was the middle of nowhere, miles from any house or gas station. Nobody should be out here, not in this storm. I slowed the car to a stop, my hands tight on the wheel. Part of me wanted to keep driving every horror movie I'd ever seen, screamed at me to do just that, but she looked like she needed help. I rolled down the window, rain spattering my face. "Hey," I called, my voice barely cutting through the downpour. "You okay? Need a ride?" She didn't move. Didn't even flinch. Just stood there, her head tilted, her body unnaturally still. The air felt heavy, like the storm was pressing down on me, and I swear I heard something, a low hum, like a distant choir, rising and falling with the wind. I leaned out further, shouting again, but before I could say anything else, she turned and walked into the trees. Not ran. Walked. Slow, deliberate, like she knew exactly where she was going. I sat there, heart pounding, staring at the spot where she'd vanished. The hum was gone, replaced by the drumming rain and my own uneven breathing. I told myself it was nothing. A drifter maybe, or someone from a nearby campsite. But the unease lingered, sharp and cold, like a blade against my spine. I glanced at the dashboard clock, 11:47 p.m., and decided I needed to get moving. That's when I saw the sign again. Hollow Creek, 3 miles. My breath caught. It was the same sign, same rusted edges, same faded letters, but I hadn't turned around. I'd been driving straight, no loops, no detours. There was no way it could be here again. I pressed the gas, harder than I meant to, the tires spinning before catching. I didn't care. I just wanted to get out of there, away from that sign, that woman, that hum that still echoed faintly in my skull. But the road didn't cooperate. It twisted, narrowed, the trees closing in until their branches scraped the sides of my car. The headlights flickered, and for a split second, I thought I saw her again, standing in the middle of the road, her pale dress glowing in the dark. I slammed on the brakes, my chest heaving, but there was nothing, just rain and shadows. Then the engine died. The silence was worse than the storm. No hum of the motor, no wipers, just the rain hammering the roof like 1,000 tiny fists. I turned the key, but the car only clicked, dead as a stone. My phone was useless, no signal, no GPS, just a blank screen reflecting my own pale face. I sat there, listening to my heartbeat, trying to think. The sign had said Hollow Creek was 3 miles away. If I could find it, maybe there'd be a gas station, a house, something. I grabbed my jacket, zipped it up, and stepped out into the rain. The cold hit me like a slap, soaking me through in seconds. The road was a muddy ribbon, flanked by dense forest that seemed to swallow the light from my flashlight. I started walking, the beam shaking in my hand, catching glimpses of twisted branches and glistening leaves. Every step felt wrong, like I was trespassing in a place that didn't want me. The air smelled of wet earth and something else, something sharp, like ozone or burnt metal. After what felt like an hour, I saw lights ahead. Not headlights, but a faint, flickering glow like candles in a window. As I got closer, I realized it was a town, or what was left of one. A cluster of buildings, half collapsed, their wooden facades rotting and streaked with moss. A faded sign read, "Welcome to Hollow Creek Est, 1883. The letters were barely legible, eaten away by time and weather. The The street was empty, the buildings dark, except for that flickering light coming from what looked like a church at the far end. Its steeple leaned crookedly, like it might topple at any moment, but the windows glowed with a soft amber warmth. I don't know why I went toward it. Maybe it was the cold, or the hope of finding someone who could help. Maybe it was something else, something I couldn't name, pulling me like a hook in my chest. The church door was ajar, creaking softly in the wind. I pushed it open, the hinges groaning, and stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of damp wood and something sweeter, like rotting fruit. Rows of pews stretched toward a cracked altar, where a dozen candles burned in a haphazard circle. Their flames didn't flicker, didn't waver, just burned steady and bright, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. And then I heard it again, the hum, louder now, rising and falling like a choir, singing in a language I couldn't understand. It wasn't coming from the altar or the pews. It was coming from the walls, the floor, the air itself. My skin prickled, every nerve screaming at me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I was frozen, staring at the shadows, on the wall shadows that weren't mine. They were human-shaped, but wrong. Too tall, too thin, their edges blurry like they were drawn in smudged charcoal. They moved when I didn't, sliding along the walls, circling the room. The hum grew louder, more insistent, and I realized it wasn't a choir. It was voices dozens, maybe hundreds overlapping, whispering, chanting. Words I couldn't make out, but they filled me with a dread so deep it felt like my bones were turning to ice. I backed toward the door, my flashlight shaking in my hand, but the shadows followed, their movements jerky and unnatural. One of them stopped, its head tilting like the woman's had, and I swear I saw eyes white, empty, staring right through me. I turned and ran, the door slamming shut behind me, the hum chasing me into the rain. I don't know how long I ran. The town seemed to stretch forever, the buildings repeating, the street looping back on itself. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I couldn't stop. The hum was everywhere now, in my head, in my chest, vibrating through my teeth. I stumbled into an alley, hoping to find a way out, but it was a dead end. Just a brick wall, slick with rain and covered in scratches deep. Jagged marks, like something had clawed at it for years. I turned to backtrack, but she was there. The woman in the pale dress. Her hair hung over her face, but I could see her mouth now, stretched into a smile that was too wide, too wrong. Her lips didn't move, but I heard her voix sonore with my ears, but inside my skull. "You heard us," she said, the words sharp and cold. "You came!" I tried to scream, but my throat was tight, my voice gone. She stepped closer, her dress dragging through the mud, and I saw her hands-long, thin fingers, too many of them, curling like spider legs. The hum surged, deafening now, and the shadows were behind her, dozens of them, their shapes twisting and merging into something I couldn't comprehend. I don't remember how I got away. One moment I was in the alley, the next I was back on the road, my car looming out of the rain like a lifeline. The engine started this time, roaring to life, and I floored it, the tires screaming as I sped away from Hollow Creek. The sign was gone when I looked back. No town, no church, just trees and rain and darkness. It's been 3 weeks since that night. I'm back in my apartment, but I haven't slept more than an hour at a time. The hum is still with me. It's faint, like a radio left on in another room, but it's there, always there. Sometimes I wake up and find scratches on my arms, shallow but precise, like someone's trying to write something I can't read. My girlfriend thinks I'm losing it, says I need to see a doctor, but I can't tell her what happened. I can't tell anyone. Last night, I found an old map in a thrift store, tattered and yellowed, dated 1890. I don't know why I bought it, but when I spread it out on my kitchen table, I saw it Hollow Creek, marked in faded ink, right where I'd been that night. I stared at it, my hands shaking, and that's when I noticed the notes scrawled in the margin, in handwriting I didn't recognize. They sing to be heard. They sing to be found. I burned the map, threw it in the sink, and watched it curl into ash. But the hum is louder now, and last night I saw her again. Not in a dream, not in a memory. She was standing at the foot of my bed, her head tilted, her smile wide and wrong. The shadows were with her, their eyes glowing white, and the hum was a scream in my skull. I don't know what they want. I don't know why they chose me. But I know one thing. Hollow Creek isn't gone. It's still out there, waiting, singing. And every night, the hum gets louder, pulling me back. The Whispering Mile. The fog was so thick that night, it felt like driving through a dream. I was on my way back from a dead-end job interview in Eugene, Oregon, my pickup truck rattling along a forgotten stretch of Highway 17, a two-lane scar cutting through the Cascades. The radio was dead, the signal lost somewhere in the mountains, and my phone had been useless for hours. No bars, no GPS, just a blank screen mocking me. It was just me, the headlights, and the fog, curling like ghostly fingers around the pines. I was exhausted, my eyes burning, my hands tight on the wheel. That's when I saw Eat a Mile marker, rusted and crooked, glowing faintly in my high beams. Mile 13. I frowned. I'd driven this road before, or so I thought, and I didn't remember any mile markers out here. The number felt wrong, like it didn't belong. I shook it off, blaming the fog and my own tired brain, but as I drove on, the air grew heavier, the silence thicker. The fog seemed to pulse, like it was breathing, and I swear I heard something a faint whisper, like voices murmuring just beyond my hearing. I turned up the heat, trying to shake the chill creeping up my spine, but it didn't help. The whispers followed me, soft and insistent, weaving through the hum of the engine. 10 minutes later, I saw it again. Mile 13. Same rusted sign, same faded paint, same eerie glow. My stomach dropped. I hadn't turned around, hadn't hit a loop. The road was straight, or as straight as these mountain passes get. I slowed down, my heart thudding, and leaned closer to the windshield. The fog parted just enough to show the sign's edges, jagged and warped, like something had tried to claw it out of the ground. The whispers grew louder, not words, but a cadence, a rhythm that made my teeth ache. I floored the gas, the truck lurching forward, desperate to leave that sign behind. But the road seemed to fight me, twisting tighter, the pines closing in until their branches scraped the truck's sides like nails on a chalkboard. The headlights flickered, and for a split second, I saw something in the foga shape, tall and thin, standing just off the road. It wasn't human, not quite. Its limbs were too long, its head too small, and it moved wrong, like a puppet with half its strings cut. I blinked, and it was gone. But the whispers surged, filling the cab with a sound that wasn't sound, a pressure that squeezed my skull. Then the engine sputtered and died. The silence was a physical thing, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the soft patter of fog against the windshield. I turned the key, but the truck only clicked, lifeless. My phone was still dead, the screen reflecting my own wide-eyed stare. The whispers were clearer now, not voices, but a chorus of sound hisses, clicks, low moans that seemed to come from the fog itself. I grabbed my flashlight from the glove box, its beam weak and trembling, and stepped out into the cold. The air smelled wrong, like damp stone and something metallic, like blood or rust. The fog was so dense I could barely see 10 feet ahead, the pines looming like silent sentinels. I started walking, following the road, the mile marker's glow fading behind me. Every step felt like a violation, like the forest was watching, waiting. The whispers followed, circling me, sometimes behind, sometimes ahead, always just out of reach. I tried to focus on the road, on finding help, but the ground felt soft, unsteady, like it might swallow me whole. After what felt like an hour, I saw a light of faint, sickly green glow flickering through the trees. It wasn't headlights or a house. It was something else, something that made my skin crawl. I should have turned back, but my truck was dead, and the whispers were louder now, urging me forward. I followed the light, my boots sinking into the muddy shoulder, until I stumbled into a clearing. It wasn't a town, not exactly. It was a cluster of structure shuts, maybe, or shacks built from wood and stone, their surfaces slick with moss and something darker, like oil. They were arranged in a circle around a pit, deep and black, the green glow pulsing from its depths. The air here was thick, heavy, with the smell of decay and that same metallic tang. The whispers were deafening now, a cacophony of voices that weren't human, weren't animal, weren't anything I could name. They came from the pit, from the huts, from the fog itself. I approached one of the shacks, its door hanging off a single hinge. Inside, the walls were covered in marking spirals, lines, shapes that didn't make sense but hurt to look at. There were objects scattered on the floor, a broken watch, a child's shoe, a cracked phone, all coated in a thin layer of dust and something sticky. My flashlight caught a mirror in the corner, its surface warped and cloudy. I looked into it, and for a moment, I didn't see myself. I saw something, a face that wasn't a face, eyes that weren't eyes, staring back with a hunger that made my blood run cold. I stumbled back, my flashlight dropping, the beam spinning wildly. The whispers surged, and I felt Ida presence, not behind me but around me, like the fog itself was alive. I ran, my boots slipping in the mud, the green glow pulsing faster, brighter. The shacks seemed to shift, their shapes blurring, the pit yawning wider as I passed. I don't know how I found the road again, but I did, my truck looming out of the fog like a ghost. I climbed in, slammed the door, and turned the key. The engine roared to life, and I didn't look back. I drove, the fog pressing in, the whispers clawing at my mind. The mile marker appeared again, mile 13, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The road stretched on, endless, the fog thickening until I couldn't see the lines anymore. I drove until the whispers faded, until the fog thinned, until I saw a gas station sign glowing in the distance. It's been a month since that night. I'm back in my apartment, but nothing feels right. The whispers are still with me, faint but constant, like static in my brain. I don't sleep much. When I do, I dream of the pit, the green glow, the thing in the mirror. My hands shake when I hold a coffee mug, and sometimes I find marks on my skin-thin, curving lines like the spirals on those walls. They fade by morning, but they're always back by night. I tried to find Highway 17 again to prove it was real, but it's not on any map. I drove the route last week, and there was no mile marker, no clearing, no shacks. Just trees and fog and silence. But yesterday, I found something in my